Biochar is the ultimate soil amendment, and everyone can make it at home. Yet, nobody really talks about it. You hear a bunch about the benefits of using ashes in the garden, but you barely hear about biochar, which is funny because biochar is one of the most researched, proven, stable soil amendments we know. And there's a reason for it. Online, especially here on YouTube, biochar is often presented like this big, dramatic, complex thing that needs enormous kilns, big contraptions, and a huge garden to make. That is not the case. You can make it with just a couple of metal cans inside your fireplace and a compost pile. Seriously, it's that simple. Biochar has been tested for decades. There are hundreds of papers on it, and they show this consistent result, that biochar helps soil structure, keeps nutrients in the soil instead of letting them be washed away, and creates a long-term home for microbial life. So right now I'm going to show you how you can easily make charcoal in your home and turn it into rich biochar for your garden. As I said, all that you need is a couple of metal cans. Any kind, any size, but the bigger the better, as long as they fit inside your fireplace. I source mine from a nearby restaurant that goes through a bunch of them every week. The first step is to take the edge off of 2 cans of the exact same size. Now pierce the bottom of one of the cans using a screwdriver and a small hammer. Bend the edges of the can you just pierced inwards so that you are able to fit both cans together. Now you are going to fit inside both cans the material you want to turn into charcoal. This can be wood, twigs, leaves, nutshells, or even animal bones and droppings. I source my wood from last winter's prunings, which I run through the wood chipper to get to a more manageable size. And that's the whole setup. Each of these should last between 10 and 20 burns. Eventually though, they will get so thin they disintegrate. At that point, simply throw them out. After you have your fireplace going for the day or night, pop the cans over the fire. You should see smoke coming out of the hole you pierced, and later fire. This is completely normal and part of the process. When the fire goes completely out, it might mean that your wood is done turning into charcoal, and that you can take the cans out of the fireplace. Now just let them reach room temperature with the hole facing down to fully stop the flow of oxygen and consequently fully stop the burn. Look at the difference of weight between before and after the burn. All the water present in the wood has evaporated. Cellulose, resins, oils and sugars have been broken down and burned away. All that remains is a skeleton of pure carbon, a fossil of the cellular structure of the wood, into which millions of microscopic pores are carved. If you look at it under a microscope, you can actually see its internal structure. All those pores and channels are what makes charcoal and biochar so special. It is basically a mineral sponge made of almost pure carbon. Yet, all that we've done so far is create charcoal. If you put this raw charcoal directly into your garden, most plants will actually do worse, not better, than if you had added nothing at all. Why is that? Because charcoal, as I said, works like a sponge. If you were to apply it to the garden as it is, it would absorb your soil's nutrients before releasing them later on. This means that for the first year, it would only steal nutrients away from your plants. Only broad beans, peas, crops that create, so to speak, their own nutrients would be able to resist this effect a little bit better. That's why you need to inoculate or charge the charcoal before applying it in the garden. Still, why bother with this extra step? Why take a material, say compost, worm castings or manure that already has nutrients and let charcoal steal them? Why not just skip the charcoal altogether and apply those materials straight in the garden as they are? Well, because something amazing happens when you get charcoal into the picture. Compost disappears in a year or two, manure the same. Nutrients leach much more easily than we think. Biochar stays. The nutrients stick to the charcoal. Microbes grow and colonize its pores. The charcoal becomes a nutrient reservoir that releases slowly and steadily. And because charcoal doesn't rot, this improvement lasts for decades. Longer, much longer than you or me. Biochar substitutes a short-term boost with a long-term nutrient bank. It might be useful at this point to break down the charcoal into smaller pieces. You'll see people using shredders or grinders for this. That's great, but also unnecessary for most gardeners. I wet mine a bit so that I don't create a cloud of charcoal and then just step on it. This gets me pieces small enough for my soil but big enough to keep the structure that brings all the benefits to the garden. Anything from rice grain to thumbnail is perfect if you're looking for an answer. Finally, we get to charging or inoculating the charcoal. And there are many ways to charge charcoal and turn it into biochar. Many people use urine, others soak it in a manure slurry or a compost tea with some other elements thrown into it. I just don't have time to micromanage all of these things, so I just throw the charcoal straight into my compost pile right at the beginning of the composting process. As it takes about 1 year for that compost to make it to the garden, the charcoal gets enough time to become charged with nutrients and microbial life, and therefore turn into what we call biochar. I then simply apply the compost to my garden beds as normal. In case you ask, no, you really shouldn't be concerned about possibly adding too much biochar to a given bed. There really isn't such a thing, not with biochar. Biochar is not fertilizer. It is a permanent home for fertility in your garden. It will hold on to nutrients that would otherwise wash away. It will be home to the microbes that make your soil fertile. And it will both improve soil drainage and increase its water holding capabilities. And all of this you can get with just some wood and a couple of metal cans. So what's keeping you from this low risk, high reward investment in your garden?